What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a Friday edition of Mile High Hockey. Drew Spivak, Will Peterson with you as always. And Drew, the Avalanche will play the Jets tonight at Ball Arena. And that's where I want to begin because you go back and look, the Avs are 13-0-2 at home, and you're kind of racking your brain. It's like, okay, what were those two losses? Well, they were both shootout losses. One to the Stars, Mikko Rantanen, of course, scored, and then one to the Hurricanes. But they were both in October. We are going on 2 months almost exactly since this team has lost here in Denver. Just another reminder what a special season we are in the middle of for the Avalanche, but also when you're kind of laying it out, you're like, wow, that's a long, long time to not fall on your home ice. And oh, by the way, of course, they're the only team in the NHL, and they're the only team in the NHL by a wide margin that has not lost a single game at home in regulation.
Yeah, and it's not just that they're winning games. They've been doing it in a dominant fashion. And we kind of talked about it the other day, just like the amount of, gap between goals for and goals against in these games that they've been playing. And it's incredible to see what this team is doing. You and I were kind of talking about a little bit before the show. It's almost like it's kind of hard sometimes to come up with things to talk about with this team because they're just so dominant at everything they do night in and night out, especially when they're on home ice. Now you get to a situation where you got a Winnipeg team that's down in the standings. They were the President's Trophy winner from last year. They're coming into town tonight, and it actually ends up being like, hey, this is a semi-big hockey game tonight with a trip to Minnesota on Sunday that you got going up against the Wild. It's going to make this kind of a really fun and entertaining type weekend, but a really good test tonight for the Avalanche team that's going to face a goalie in Connor Hellebuck, who's back from injury. And, it's important to keep this thing going. I wonder how many games they could actually go at home. When you look at the home schedule, it's like this streak could go for a while before they end up actually losing a game on home ice. It's kind of crazy to think, but it's fun. If you're going to Ball Arena night in and night out, like, well, how many goals are they going to put up tonight?
Right.
It's been 5, 6, 7 goals. It's been fun to watch.
Yeah, no, it has been fun to watch, and you bring up Connor Hellebuck, and I know you had mentioned on Tuesday, hey, the Jets could make a run with Hellebuck back in the lineup, and then, I go and look at their recent games, and they lost 1-0 to St. Louis. It's like, oh, that's classic Jets. Hellebuck stands on his head, at least regular season Jets. We know he has had some struggles in the playoffs, or some big struggles in the playoffs, but, man, they get this big boost back, and they lose 1-0 to a bad St. Louis team. This will be Hellebuck's 4th game back. I don't know. I want to dig into a little more of that conversation with you. Do you think the Jets can actually be a threat in the Central Division, or was it more of like a wild card type deal given how dominant the Avs, the Stars, and the Wild have been thus far?
Listen, I think the way that the Central Division has played out so far this year, it's going to be difficult for them to get into that top 3, just because the distance that the Avalanche, the Wild, and the Stars have created within that division. I mean, Winnipeg got off to a really good start. I think people forget that. They were playing really good hockey before the injury to Hellebuck, and then they just fell off a cliff, which you would kind of expect when you're losing the best goaltender in the NHL. That's going to happen. But Winnipeg's got issues outside of just Hellebuck being injured. They don't have the scoring that they had. Losing Nikolai Ehlers to Carolina, I think, was a big blow to that team. You had Jonathan Toews, who hadn't played hockey in like 3 years, coming up and having to play meaningful second line and first line minutes for this team. And it hasn't really worked. He's already been bumped all the way down to the 4th line. So they have a lot of issues. So I think for Winnipeg, it's like, all right, as long as they have Connor Hellebuck, they're going to have a chance to kind of creep back into this thing. But they got to figure other things out. They got to get some more scoring punch from guys like Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor and guys like that. If they can get that going, they can kind of make a run of this thing. I really do think that it's going to be tough for them to get into that top 3 because, I mean, just as well as Colorado's played, Minnesota and Dallas have played just as well. In fact, in some cases, even better. And they're still not making up ground on the Avalanche.
Yeah, no, it's a tough spot for the Jets to be in. And even losing Hellebuck for a few weeks could ultimately tank their season. They may be scratching and clawing all year long to get back into that wild card picture. And we'll look ahead to Jets a little bit more tonight in the Wild on Sunday. That's going to be a big game. But Drew, I want to look back at what happened against the Kraken on Tuesday. It was funny. We sort of closed the show talking about, are they going to boo Cale Makar again? And they did. And there actually was kind of a handful of things to unpack from that hockey game that were funny. One, they booed Cale Makar every time he touched the puck, and it's like, guys, it's been 2.5, almost 3 years. Get over it. Two, the Kraken played like their A++ game and had relentless pressure on the Avs. They're up 3-2 after the second period, and then ultimately the Avs win it 5-3. And then 3, They have the most bizarre state-sponsored coach press conference after the game. It's like, man, the Avalanche can really break teams. They only do a 1-minute presser with their head coach, and only the team reporter was allowed to ask questions. We've since learned some more details about this, that the other reporters fed their questions to the team reporter, and then the coach answered them, even though he was brief. And then the Kraken PR staff has since apologized in a couple of different articles for how they handled it. But, for just a ho-hum Tuesday night game in Seattle, there were actually 3 kind of big takeaways from that hockey game.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because when we talked the other day, it was kind of like, I don't think either one of us were really all that excited about this game, which is funny because it's a national television game against a Seattle team that got out to a good start, kind of fell off lately. But I mean, I've watched the Kraken a decent amount this year, and that was hands down the best game I've seen them play all year. They played with speed. They were able to put the puck behind Mackenzie Blackwood. The way that their offense was able to get behind the Avalanche defenders was a little bit concerning. I mean, they gave up, 38 shots in that game? The Avs don't give up 38 shots in a game. I think they're averaging like 27.5 shots a game. So to see Seattle do that to that defense was a little bit concerning. And then, for the first time all season, the Avalanche are trailing in the third period, and they find a way to get a victory. Just kind of what they do. It was almost like they flipped a switch. Mm-hmm. They have this ability to just flip a switch and come out and just find a way to get a victory against a Philip Grubauer guy that was playing pretty well. Like we saw with Grubauer here. Once he gets into his zone, he starts to face a lot of shots. He can get into a space where it's really hard to beat him. The Avalanche just found a way. They got a power play goal, which, by the way, I hadn't realized this until I looked it up, that they've actually got a power play goal in 3 of their last 5 games.
We'll take it, man.
We'll take it.
We'll take it at this point in the year.
A little bit. Yeah. So it's a good thing. But, the booing thing, where I say this, I think it's funny. I think it's fun that they're doing it. I love that they add a little spice to something that's not really a rivalry, make it a little bit more fun. But the state sponsored media thing was something to behold. It was literally like a pool reporter that you see like in an NFL game or something like that, where you go meet the referee and there's one reporter there. What a bizarre thing to do. But I think it speaks more to where media is at in 2025, almost 2026 now, to where you see a lot of times that teams are not sending, or there's not traveling pool of reporters going to road games a lot. Like we've seen with the Avs a couple times where there's nobody there representing the Avalanche media. And it's just kind of a sad state of affairs of where we're at in this day and age with media, that's what has to happen. And it's a bad look for the Kraken, no matter any way you slice it. It's a bad look. I know they apologize for it. Hopefully we don't see that again, but it's something that when you look back, it's like, man, this is kind of embarrassing for a franchise that's trying to kind of figure things out still in their first few years of existence.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. That's the right word for it. And I think it brings us to a logical question of, do the Avalanche have a target on their backs in terms of getting the team's best efforts, no matter who the opponent, even if Seattle had lost 8 of 9 going into that hockey game? Because the Kraken looked awful motivated playing the Avs, and they did play a really good first 40 minutes, kind of fell apart in the third, but that's what the Avs will do to you. They'll kind of break you, and then they'll make your head coach have a state-sponsored media press conference because he's so ticked off. But I think it's a valid question, and my answer before I ask you is yes. And Jared Bednar has spoken on this, that we saw it with Nashville, even, kind of a veteran team that's poor in the standings, but they played 2 pretty good games against the Avs, one out there in Tennessee and one here in Denver. And I think it is going to be something that it doesn't worry me. I want to make that clear. It doesn't worry me because the Avs are the most talented team in the NHL, but it is going to have to be something that's on the radar of the leaders, specifically the head coach Bednar and the captain Gabriel Landeskog, of guys, we really can't take nights off, because even if we're playing a team that we should roll out of bed and win by 3, 4, 5 goals, they're going to give the best effort because we are on pace for a historic all-time great season. And this is just human nature. If they're only going to see us once, twice, 3 times on their calendar, they're going to bring an A+ effort when we're the opposition in the opposing sweater on the other side of the ice.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I think, we've seen it already this year. You mentioned Nashville. We've seen it with teams like Vancouver. They've come in and given Colorado a little bit of a hard time this year. You are going to get the best shot from a team night in and night out. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's just another form of motivation for an Avalanche team that's already got a ton of motivation to begin with. To me, it signals like, hey, we know we're going to get everybody's best shot. We can't take nights off. Now, maybe we can take a period off, kind of like they did the other night against Seattle, but they're so good that they can just flip the switch and say, all right, let's go out and win and dominate this hockey game. So I think you are going to see night in and night out, you're going to get every team's best shot. And is it going to maybe bite the Avalanche every once in a while? Yeah, probably will. But at the end of the day, I think it's definitely going to be a good motivating factor for this team.
Yeah, no, I would agree that, it'll help keep them getting up for these games. And you and I have talked about, it's not like you have some 20-point lead and you can just relax. If it helps keep them up and keep the foot on the gas and ultimately win the Central Division, which of course would come with the President's Trophy, almost certainly that would be a good thing. All right, we talked some about the Jets, so let's close on the Wild because that will be on Sunday. We'll be back on Tuesday to break it down. But Drew, this is a really fun game. One, Minnesota, the atmosphere is always electric. I don't love giving Wild fans a ton of credit because I don't like the organization, but their fans are good. They're good hockey fans. It's a Sunday afternoon. The Vikings are out of it. Obviously, the Broncos will be playing a huge game with the Jaguars, so a lot of people in Denver will be, kind of flipping back and forth or focused on football, watch apps later. But my point is, in Minnesota, they're focused on their hockey team. Their football team's done. It's going to be really interesting to see with Quinn Hughes playing his first game against the Avs. Not ever, obviously, but in a Wild sweater. Potential playoff preview. I mean, as far as regular season games in late December go, this is one to circle.
That's what I was going to ask. Can you have a litmus test game in late December? Because this kind of feels like it is. You go back to a couple of weeks ago when the Avalanche played in St. Paul against the Wild. That was probably the biggest test they've had all season. And they almost failed it. I mean, it took a Gabe Landeskog goal late in that third period to tie the game. Then they end up losing. What was it, an overtime or shoot? I can't remember which one it was. Yeah,
because remember the Wild goalie had the big time celebration, right. And people took offense. Whatever. Yeah.
But this is a big game, as big of a game as you can have in late December. You mentioned Quinn Hughes. It's gonna be fun to see how he is fitting in already with that Minnesota roster. I mean, I looked on the score sheet last night. He played 32 minutes.
Wow.
Last night.
It's a Kale McCarr type total,
That's ridiculous.
Or even more than a Kale McCarr total.
I was going to say, Kale plays, 25, 27 minutes?
Depends on how desperate the Avs are, but yes.
I mean, we all know 32 minutes is not sustainable, so that's probably not going to happen, but this is going to be a really fun matchup that I'm really looking forward to on Sunday, just to kind of see where this team's at. I mean, Minnesota, we talked about it the other day, how they don't really quite have the depth down the middle, but they've got really skilled wingers. Their defense is really good. The goaltending's been fantastic for them for this year. So I'm really curious to see kind of how they go into that atmosphere on Sunday. Because you mentioned it is going to be a raucous atmosphere for an afternoon game in Minnesota on Sunday afternoon. So a game that I'm like, okay, let's go into this one. Then you got Tuesday night, you got Utah. Then you got a couple days off for the holiday break. So really fun kind of weekend ahead for the Avalanche.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully they stay undefeated in regulation at Ball Arena against the Jets tonight. And then the Wild game on Sunday, as I like what you said, litmus test, if you will. And Drew and I will be back on Tuesday to talk about both those games, whatever else pops up. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week on Mile High Hockey.